Russia is waging a hybrid war against NATO countries. Kremlin wants to rewrite history again. The Russian economy is collapsing. But it is still holding on. This topic in more detail. Good afternoon. It's me, Henry Keane at UATV English, giving the hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine as usual. One of the NATO countries may request protection under Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty due to Russia's hybrid operations and cyber attacks. This was stated in Washington by a senior official of the alliance. Voice of America reports that the official answered the question of what NATO's reaction might be to Russia's hybrid operations and attempts to destabilize Europe. Ultimately, everything depends on what actions Russia will continue to take, the official said. It's very clear to us, we know that in field of cybernetics, things can go beyond the limits of the 5th article, as well as hybrid sabotage operations. The representative of the alliance added that ultimately protection from the alliance can be requested by the country suffering from such attacks. At the same time, for the first time in 10 years, the United States brought its military bases in Europe to a state of high combat readiness, CNN reports, citing numerous sources. According to the publication, this is due to information received by the Pentagon that Russia is planning to carry out sabotage and terrorist attacks on military installations of the United States. The planned attacks on American bases are part of a sabotage campaign that Moscow has recently been trying to carry out across Europe, the sources say. A senior NATO official told CNN that Russian sabotage in Europe has become, I quote, increasingly brazen and aggressive, end of quote, in recent months. This may be related to the elections in the West, he believes. What we are seeing now is the most coordinated and aggressive action since the Cold War. We see sabotage, terrorist plots, arson, real things that have taken lives, the NATO spokesperson said. According to another senior NATO official, the alliance has significantly increased intelligence sharing about Russia's subversion campaign in Europe, which in recent months has become increasingly aggressive amid elections in the West, according to CNN. A NATO spokesman said Putin, I quote, still believes time is on his side and is willing to tolerate a truly staggering number of military casualties, but how much the Russians themselves are willing to endure is an open question. By the way, in July, 12 Russian regions increased the amount of payments to new contract soldiers. There are fewer and fewer people willing to die for their dictator. Let's call a spade a spade. So the Kremlin is looking for new ways to drag ordinary people into the meat grinder. The Kremlin has decided to rewrite Wikipedia and create a new version of history, reports The Economist. Specifically, Moscow aims to achieve this through its own censored version of Wikipedia, the RuWiki source. Wikipedia had faced trouble with the Kremlin before, with Russian censors threatening it from 2014. But it was only in late 2023, with the appearance of billboards and commercials all over Moscow, that a serious plan to replace Wikipedia became clear. RuWiki, as the census project is known, is mostly a straightforward copy of Wikipedia. Well, almost straight and somewhat forward. The most sensitive moments of history have been left out or just rewritten. The Kremlin's ideologues hope that millions of Russians will now embrace this new version as the true one, and they will, as far as I know, Russians. The RuWiki project could be called Orwellian if the British author were not subject to periodic Russian censorship himself. For example, the article about 1984 lacks the site's usual description of Winston Smith's Ministry of Truth, which corrects the historical record. Amazing, isn't it? A brave new Russian world interprets the terrible atrocities committed by Russians in Bucha, near Kyiv, in 2022 as, I quote, Ukrainian and Western disinformation campaign. End of quote. Kherson, destroyed by Russian bombs, is mentioned without any reference to the war. The execution of nearly 22,000 Polish officers in Katyn in 1940 has been rewritten to cast doubt on archival documents that directly, numerously, and without any shadow of the doubt can prove to anyone who pays some time to read and analyze these documents, this mass massacre was carried out by Soviet special services. An analysis of the RuWiki site by the more or less independent Russian media organization Mediazona shows that the vast majority of new edits are made during business hours on weekdays. This also suggests that the editing is done by teams of paid authors, unlike Wikipedia's volunteer model. Well, I guess there is only one question to be asked here if you want to find out who did it. And that question is, who profits from these changes? Wiki Wild Russia. Rustem Umerov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, met with EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Josep Borrell in Washington, and here's why.
I would like to thank the EU for the important decision to use profits from the frozen assets of the Russian Federation. On May 21, 2024, the EU Council decided to allocate 90% of the frozen assets of the Russian Federation to the Ukraine Assistance Fund, which is a part of the European Peace Facility. These funds will be used for defense needs Ukraine. Rustem Umerov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
According to Mr. Umerov, the total amount of profit for Ukraine from Russian frozen cash is around €3 billion annually. The first tranche of €1.5 billion will become available in early August 2024. The EU and Ukraine agreed that this money will be allocated to three areas: ammunition, air defense, support of Ukrainian manufacturers. The G7 decision to use the interest from frozen Russian assets for Ukraine is only the first step, which should be followed by the actual alienation of all assets. I mean $300 billion value at least in favor of Ukraine. Well, don't look at me. This was stated by British Ambassador to Ukraine Martin Harris at a special event at the Kyiv Security Forum. Moreover, countries doing business with Moscow face the threat of additional sanctions. Also, the rapid growth of Chinese yuan in the Russian economy may have reached its limit. Bloomberg writes that there is a noticeable shortage of yuan on the Russian market and Chinese banks are in no hurry to cooperate. What could be the reason for that, I wonder? And it's not only the yuan that is noticeably short in Russia. Thanks so much for watching. It was me, Henry Keane at UATV English, giving you some hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Please subscribe, like and comment. Your voice matters. In turn, it helps Ukrainian voice to be heard globally. So thank you so very much for that. Stay safe and tune for more. Goodbye.